floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I can't wait to hear what criteria you use to say that Aaron Rodgers won the offseason with the Packers. I don't see in any using any objective criteria where you can say that he won this. He was looking for a deal that had guaranteed money to make sure that he couldn't be moved on from. That didn't happen. And there's talk about him not playing, but that really wasn't a possibility. So he was able to bring one wide receiver back that cost the club $3 million. How is that a win? Now, Green Bay had to go through some negative publicity and press. Okay, but they get a really motivated quarterback to come in and he's set something up a way to challenge himself similar to the way Michael Jordan did. They get a motivated player. How has Green Bay won? And then now the report that he's going to be traded next season, and it's verbal. Those verbal contracts in the NFL, they don't mean anything. Verbal contracts in the world don't mean anything at all. I got a verbal contract when I was in the league, or a verbal promise where, hey, if you do the following, doesn't matter what happens, you can go 1-15 and it doesn't matter, just do this. And look, went 9-7 and got fired. So that's the value of those verbal promises. They're worth nothing.
And if people are trying to connect the dots, what year is Coach Mangini talking about? Just check the 9-7 year, and now you can figure it out. All right, then let's talk about the football game from last night. Because, Coach, I saw 6 quarterbacks play. And the 3 best that I saw in no particular order were Josh Dobbs, Mason Rudolph, and a guy you loved coming out of college. I was skeptical of him, Dwayne Haskins. And all of those guys play for the Steelers. One of them won't make the team, I would imagine, unless they're going to carry 4 quarterbacks, which is very atypical in the modern NFL. With Dak coming off a massive injury and having massive surgery, in the last 10 months, do you find it odd that the Cowboys didn't make having just a competent, established backup quarterback? I'm not saying you tell Phillip Rivers we'll give you $15 million to come out of retirement, but a guy who was started in NFL games like they had last year with Dalton. Are you surprised that wasn't a higher priority for them?
Well, you and I discuss this all the time, and not to just be contrarian here, but I feel like you often say that the situation in Green Bay, where as an organization they went and drafted a competent backup in case their MVP quarterback got hurt, and they had a player there who they hoped and they believe could carry the team should that happen. I firmly believe in that. I think you need a really good backup because we see it every year. A team goes deep into the season, and then late in the season, their starter goes down. It very rarely works out where the backup comes in and does it. Nick Foles is such an aberration, but usually that team implodes. So, yes, I agree they should have someone better placed than they do right now. But I also think that's part of the reason Green Bay did what they did when they drafted Jordan Love.
Well, isn't there, Coach, just stay here just for a moment. There's a happy medium, right? I'm going to use an odd analogy. If Dak Prescott or Aaron Rodgers use a car, if they're Rolls Royces, it's one thing to take a second mortgage out on my house to buy a BMW as my backup car, and another thing entirely to be like, I have a tricycle as my backup car, which is Garrett Gilbert. There's a happy medium between the two, between having having essentially a third or fourth stringer as your backup and using 2 valuable assets, a first-round pick and the 4th-round pick you traded to move up in order to get your backup. There's somewhere in between with like $5 million for Jacoby Brissett or something like that maybe threads the needle, right?
Well, but you're comparing it to the whole car. I think it's a little bit more like the engine. So if you believe that your team is a Rolls Royce, it's hard to go put a engine into a Rolls Royce that doesn't fit with a Rolls Royce and
Sure.
expect it to run with any kind of efficiency. So ideally, you have the component to put into that car if the engine breaks down. So that's more the thought process. Yeah, you can go get a beat up used engine and try to put it in a nice car and hope that it runs, but it never does. And when you've got a really good team and you believe you have a good team, to have some depth and meaningful depth at quarterback position, it's a great situation. And you draft him in the first round, you've got 5 years of relatively cheap labor as a backup in that position. Think about how many backups we see that get $10 million, that get numbers that are staggering for guys that aren't even close to that number.
Yeah. Coach and Brian Gutekunst, they're on a two-person group chat of the two people left in the world who like the Jordan Love pick. They're the only people, Coach Mangini and Brian Gutekunst, the only people in the world still defending the Jordan Love pick. It's just unbelievable.
I get accused of being anti-player. It's not that. I'm just pro-reality. There's a reality that exists in the league that some people don't want to recognize, but it's there. And not every decision is some sort of conspiracy theory with a grassy knoll where you're out to get somebody.
Well, let's talk about this reality. I'm really confused by, to be honest, the way Carson Wentz has been handled almost his whole career. Like we talk about the MVP he almost won more than we talk about MVPs that guys actually won. It's like the guy was unbelievable for 3 months. Therefore, you should never draft competition for him. Therefore, he's in Indianapolis now. He's hurt again. Shocker. And it's like, no, Frank Reich, got in front of it and was like, no, this is Carson's team because of all the 0 games he's played for the Colts in his career. I said the other day, it's really tough in this league if you're fragile physically and mentally. And I don't mean general mental health. I mean as far as like competing. And if you're going to be thrown off by a backup quarterback being in there, that's concerning. I think the Colts have a really good roster. What's your thoughts on, their situation with Carson being hurt and them seemingly wanting to protect Carson from competition, I guess?
I'm going to say something I don't say very often, but I absolutely 100% agree with you, Nick. Absolutely. And
thank you.
We all have heard that saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. And much has been given to Carson Wentz, and much is expected of him. And you have to, he's had so many opportunities. He's been protected. He was with the team that drafted him. He was paid by the team that drafted him. He got another tremendous opportunity. And whether it's been poor play or injury, he hasn't lived up to his side of the bargain. So to bring someone in to compete with him, to say that there is the potential that you could lose your job, I don't think that's unreasonable. And a lot of players get very frustrated with the way the quarterbacks are handled because everybody else is constantly not threatened by competition, but constantly challenged by competition. But yet we don't want to challenge the position that we need to be most resilient. We need to be most ready to handle adversity. Yep. And it doesn't make any sense. It's counterintuitive. I agree with your take on this all the way.
All right, lastly, before you go, you accused me during Patrick Mahomes' second season in the league of already putting him in the Hall of Fame. And I was right. He was clearly going to be a Hall of Famer. Colin Cowherd came out the other day and was like, oh, Mahomes, let's all pump the brakes. Not yet a Hall of Famer. I'm curious, you, Coach, and we only have about 40 seconds here. If Mahomes today retired and you're on one of the 50 Hall of Fame voters, does he get your vote?
No. So Ernie Nevers played 54 games, okay, back in 1926 with the Duluth Eskimos. He played the least amount of games in the history of the NFL and made the Hall of Fame. And that's still more games than Patrick Mahomes has. And that's a player that was from the 20s, scored 40 points in a game, had 6 touchdowns in a game, kicked, did everything. He is the bar back in 1926.
Okay.
So nope, he's going to have to keep
He
playing.
doesn't have a Super Bowl MVP and a league MVP. I love you, Coach.